Zach, great to have you on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Super pumped because it's not every day that I have someone on that I was able to actually see their product, not a a picture, but actually see your product at the Human X conference. So I'm really excited to chat here today. Let's assume there's part of the audience that is just getting to know you. So first, I'd love if you could tell the audience a little bit about your background and then about Coco.
Coco, we make these, autonomous vehicles that deliver food and groceries. We started in Los Angeles. So if you've been to LA in the last few years, you've probably seen these big pink robots strolling around the streets. I started this with my co-founder Brad out at UCLA. We were doing robotics research, and we had a lot of very strong opinions about how to get these robots to get out into the world and do useful things. So we started this around 2020. It's coincidentally right when the pandemic lockdowns happened. Funny enough, our kind of first customer base was like the retired community of Santa Monica, getting like contact-free grocery delivery right when the lockdown started. So it was an interesting launch period, but we started in, around UCLA and in Santa Monica, and now we've kind of expanded across some of the cities in the US and Europe.
Was it like talk me through? Was it a good thing that you started during the pandemic?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, the thing that people talked about a lot and the cities really liked and was kind of a selling point to businesses. I thought it was like a little gimmicky. It was contact free, and it was like, oh, robots are perfect because they're contact free. And I was like, well, obviously DoorDash and Uber are just going to start dropping the food at your door, so there's no contact. I guess in theory it's less contact, but someone's like a human still making your food. So but that people repeated that a lot, and so that was an interesting kind of starting point. Supply chain manufacturing, a lot of that stuff got disrupted obviously, so that made things pretty difficult to start out. Funding also just disappeared and then reappeared very quickly, so it was a bit turbulent time to start out. But we like, it was at that time it was just me and Brad, so we were already living together, so we just kept working together, and all the first employees were just living at the apartment. So um lockdowns and work from home just never really happened for us because it was like our close knit friend group trying to build this.
How like how far are your robots typically going when they're making a delivery? Like I guess what's kind of the average short trip versus maybe longest they end up going?
Yeah, and I can kind of paint a picture of how
Yeah.
it works for anyone that hasn't seen it before. So um we work with restaurants, we work with Uber Eats and DoorDash and Wolt in Europe, and the robots are essentially robo couriers on these platforms where orders can be dispatched to them. So we might get a request, hey, go pick up this food from this restaurant. So the robot will drive to the restaurant. The restaurant will be instructed from their tablet or whatever interface they have to go outside, put the food in, Coco bot number one. They'll put it in, we'll close the lid, we'll lock, and then we'll navigate mostly using sidewalks. Sometimes we use bike lanes or shoulders of the road, depending on the city. Um, and we try to get it to the customer as fast as possible, as safely as possible, as reliable as possible. Customer can track it in whatever app they ordered from, and then they click unlock, it opens, they get their food out. Um, so we're typically getting dispatched on trips that are under 2 miles. Most of the US we're doing under 2 miles, and in Europe we're doing like up to 3 kilometers. Uh, and it depends on the city, right? So in LA, that might be a big chunk of the orders, but it's not most of them. In Europe, that's almost all of the deliveries because it's just way denser than most of the US. In New York, that would be, all of the orders are probably going 2 miles or less. So we're not doing, in most of our markets, we're not doing 100% of the orders. Um, so we're doing kind of the shorter distance ones, but it's a huge chunk of the orders, and it can help really bring down the cost of delivery.
And really the core model flourishes in large cities, right? Because of the volume at which orders happen and the close proximity to a particular restaurant or grocery stores, or like if it was rural America, it
Yeah,
gets a little little more difficult, right? So
yeah.
um where are you primarily focused today, and where I guess in the near term with what you can share are you hoping to expand to?
Yeah, so we're in Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, and Helsinki, Finland. Um, and we're doing roughly we're planning to do a handful of cities upcoming this year, both US and Europe. And what we're looking for is, yeah, dense urban, right? We're trying to essentially build the autonomous vehicle um, equivalent of a bike courier, right? So we're designed for these dense areas, high traffic, high parking complexity. So, areas where a full size autonomous vehicle wouldn't make sense, areas where even car based driving is really difficult. So the orders aren't going very far, and having a smaller form factor is actually just logistically much easier for the businesses to work with. Um, and then these are also a lot of the most expensive markets. So these are markets where it's incredibly expensive to get things delivered um, because of all the logistical complexity and cost of living in these cities, right? So that's where we can use our technology to make a really big impact on the merchants and the customers ordering these goods. Um, so, um, so yeah, like that's going to look like most of the major cities.
Let's talk a little bit about the technology. So, how are you leveraging AI today with the robotics?
Yeah, so the robots are partially autonomous, so we have a kind of a hybrid approach. Um, you want like the North Star for our product and for our customers is reliability. So when we accept a trip and we say we're going to get it to you in 15 minutes, we want to get it to you at 15, in 15 minutes every single time. And consistency is really the big part. Like I want it to be dumping snow in Chicago and it's negative 15 degrees outside and it's tough to get drivers on the road because it's so miserable and everyone's ordering food or groceries because they don't want to leave their house. We really want to build a system where that robot will show up exactly on time, even in those conditions, because I think that will make a really big difference in the quality of service for our customers. Um, so our job is to then how do we train an AI system that can drive reliably in all those different kinds of conditions, and then how do we build the product and infrastructure where our human operators can kind of fill in, economically, to make sure that it works every single time. And our approach to this has always been, if you want to get AI into the real world and make it actually useful, you first need a business that is out in the world and doing useful things, and that becomes your training data. So I think there's been a lot of different approaches in self-driving and robotics, and some of them are, we're going to build a couple $100,000 vehicle, and we're going to do a lot of testing and a lot of mapping and a lot of different iterations until the tech works well enough, and then we'll move on to the next market. The approach we took was, we started by being entirely human driven, and we made sure our vehicle was super low cost so we could actually run a profitable business. So we've been delivering profitably in these like most expensive markets in the world. Um, and because we're able to do that, we're collecting an enormous amount of real world data across, sunny Los Angeles, but chaotic traffic, dark, cold Helsinki, snow covered Chicago, and then pouring rain Miami. We can collect real world data in these most chaotic urban environments as part of our business model. So it's not this, R&D training cost for us. Our business just naturally collects all of this data. And then as the vehicles become more and more autonomous, the human operator is really just correcting, supervising at some ratio, and making the system better and better until you get to that point where it's fully automated.
I like that approach a lot. It makes sense. Must be fun for people, huh, to be driving these robots too.
Yeah, we started. It was all. We started by recruiting all of the like college kids on our street, and then they recruited their friends because our kind of main hiring requirement was, are you good at playing video games? Um, and so we had like all gamers as the drivers, and now the roles changed a little bit. It's becoming less and less like, do you have really good reflexes? And now it's like, do you have really good judgment and decision making?
Yeah,
Because you're training a system rather than swerving around potholes. But it's always a mix of both, I guess.
you had lots of parents out there punching the air that yelled at their kids saying, "You're not going to get paid or you're not going to have a career in playing video games," right? Back then. Now they can enter tournaments, they can stream and
Drive
in the early
robots.
days, yeah, drive robots. I love it.
Didn't see that one coming, huh?
I love it. When when you look at, I guess, the complexity of some of these other major areas, you already mentioned it, right? Like a Chicago, I'm assuming you'll have to create like some different robots as a result of, like, I mean, I grew up in Boston area, so when we got snow, good luck going anywhere. You'd almost need like a snowmobile, like robot, right? Is that part of kind of how you think of some of these colder climate areas as well? It's maybe the hardware will have to change as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say today we're trying to, meet or exceed the kind of reliability and uptime of a a courier in a car or a bike, right? And so the worse the weather gets, the lower that bar goes, but also the harder it is to operate. So if cars physically can't drive, we're going to have a tough time today, right? So if you have a flood in Miami, it's like we didn't design the vehicles to be submergible. So if cars are not driving, we're not driving today. Snow is similar, where it might be hard for them to drive, and then it's hard for us to drive, right? In all of these snowy markets, we put snow tires in the vehicles, we warm the batteries. So the hardware is slightly different in cold markets versus a warm market. But over time, I do think we will try to just keep moving the bar up and up and up, right? So, maybe that does look like some treads or some sort of complicated chassis to handle really chaotic, like heavy snow environments. We've always joked of like we should just make them much heavier and plow the snow. Uh, but yeah, I think over time we'll keep engineering to making it drive even in situations where cars can't drive. But that's sometimes that's going to be physically impossible to do, and sometimes it might just not make cost sense to do it because those events are rare. But that is the North Star of the company, is to continually make it more reliable.
It makes sense because in many cases, if there's a big snowstorm, many of the restaurants and the grocery stores shut down anyhow. So it's like you weren't going to get anything before anyway. That's why they always tell you to stock up before hurricanes in Florida and things like that, because more than likely you're not going to be able to get what you need.
Yeah.
I just think it'd be so funny though. Like obviously, people are dealing. If you're dealing with a flood in Miami, and then you see one of your robots like boating to drop someone's food off when they're like flooding. You probably wouldn't see, at least in the short term, right? But um, I do think it's very possible in the future that that would be something you'd be doing, and that'd be cool. Uh,
Yeah, we're going to constantly make them more capable, right? So I think it'll evolve over time to having more and more complex features. We're waiting for you need the technology. The more complicated you make the chassis, you make the robot, the more you're going to want to ride this kind of wave of AI getting more and more capable in the physical world, right? And the second thing is you're going to want the cost of a lot of this hardware to come down. And I think all of that is inevitable. So I think we'll be really well positioned to use both of those advancements to make the vehicle more useful.
I think you have the right approach when you mentioned things started manual and then you started implementing AI more to make it a little less manual, and then I'm assuming over time, it's very possible, right, that they are fully autonomous, or at least very close. A lot of spaces, it seems, try to skip a step where they go to full automation before they actually had people do it. Would love your thoughts on why that's probably a bad thing. And I know it depends on the space, but talk me through why you believe your approach, in hindsight, was best, and maybe why other companies outside of even doing stuff with robotics that are trying to leverage AI should probably take a similar approach.
Yeah, I think there's like two things. One is, what is the kind of critical ingredient to solving the real world AI problem, right? And for us, that's navigation, mostly just navigation, right? How do I get from A to B autonomously? Um, it is somewhat trivial to drive down a block autonomously, or to like map out a couple blocks and reliably do that autonomously. So the real trouble comes into like, you know, if you're trying to do this, a million times a day, um, you're gonna encounter all of the chaos of the real world, right? So you're gonna have cars that are parked across the sidewalk. You're gonna have cars that you're gonna have like crime scenes that pop up. You're gonna have construction zones. You're gonna have people running red lights. You're gonna have like really bad visibility in a snowstorm. Um, you're going to have all of these things that are difficult to train the model on if you do not have a tremendous amount of data. And it's not just like a volume of similar data, right? It's like you need to actually get a data set that models the distribution of the real world. Um, and collecting that is just obviously very, very, very expensive if you don't have a business that already collects that. Um, because like by definition, you're looking for like really long tail corner cases that are hard to predict. Um, this is one of the problems with like the freeway autopilot systems. It's like you need a lot of data on like crazy freeway accidents and how to avoid that. But that's a really hard data set to collect unless you have a ton of cars, right? Because those are like very dangerous and uncommon situations. So collecting that data set is very important for you to train the system, but it's hard to get. So you just need scale. So if that's the critical ingredient to making the AI models more intelligent at navigating the real world, then the key question is, what is the best path for us to actually get that data and get to scale? Um, and so for us, it's like, well, we're going to have to build a service. We're going to have to build the infrastructure for fleet management. We're going to have to build our maps and routing software. We're going to have to build the merchant integrations and the marketplace integrations and um, the reliable hardware and the hardware that's cost effective, right? It can't be super expensive. So we're gonna have to do all of that anyway. So why don't we focus the first few years of the business just on that stuff, what I call the boring stuff, so that you have a actual business model and a real service. Then you get the scale. Then that trains the AI system. So that was kind of our philosophy. I think that's like I think that's playing out to kind of be even more true than I originally thought. Like what I didn't see coming 4 years ago was that all of the biggest companies in the world were going to be spending all of their free cash flow on training AI models and making AI better, right? So the company that benefits from intelligence commoditizing or becoming more useful and less expensive and more capable, right? The companies that benefit from that trend the most are the ones that actually have the fleet doing real world services, right? So we'll see how this evolves, but as these models get better and better and better, I think we're really well positioned to integrate that and to take advantage of that. So we announced recently a collaboration we're doing with OpenAI, and we're exploring that exact thing, right? How do I use the kind of best models in the world that might be too big to run on the vehicle? How can I work with that to make our on-device models more and more capable? And as that model gets less expensive to use and smarter and smarter and smarter, um, our vehicle, our autonomy stack's just going to get better and better and better. So I think that's like a really cool trend that we're going to benefit from. Now, if you have a $200,000 robot and all you've been working on is the autonomy, that doesn't benefit you that much because it might accelerate your autonomy plan, but then you have to go build all the other stuff. You need your vehicle costs to come way down. So I think for us, that order of operations was really important.
I love it. Zach, what's next for the company that you can share with us here today?
Yeah, we're growing very quickly in a lot of different markets. I think there's a lot of things happening right now at the same time that is really interesting. So one is this huge acceleration of AI capabilities, right, which is going to drive our costs lower. It's going to make the service more reliable. All these things that are going to make the product better. And at the same time, you also have delivery is really, really, really expensive, and it's not getting cheaper. And I think the gig worker model is under a lot of scrutiny in a lot of parts of Europe and in the US, but particularly in Europe. So everything's kind of moving towards this position of, okay, well, we clearly need some form of human plus automation to make this sustainable, right? People just aren't going to pay $30 to get a $10 cheeseburger, right? Like, and that's the kind of the direction we're going in. So if you want to keep supporting local businesses and giving them a way to deliver to people, and you want people to keep shopping local and ordering these things, something has to give. And so I think that kind of macro trend at the same time as AI getting more and more capable, I think this is becoming very front of mind for a lot of businesses right now. Of like, oh, this might actually be the time that self-driving is going to impact my, impact my business. And also a ton of props to Waymo, because I think they've also made this very real for people, because you can see the product operating at some meaningful scale. And we've been hearing about self-driving for decades. And so I think Waymo's also changed people's perspective of like, oh, now it's actually real. I can see it, right? I'm not reading an article. I'm actually in the car. There's no one driving. So I think those things are all happening together. And so it's a really interesting time for us. So we're seeing a lot of customer demand, and we're trying to go as fast as we can to service it. And as I said, like we have an actual profitable business model today. So we're really well positioned to go as fast as we can and support as many of these businesses as possible.
I love it. Well, I'm a fan, and I look forward to staying in touch with you, Zach, to continue to hear where things continue to progress to. But congratulations to you and the team on everything that you've built so far. Really exciting, and look forward to definitely staying in touch.
Awesome. Thank you so much.